Welcome to the Batten School's Grounds to Listen, place for dialogue, debate, and discovery with leaders who bring people together across divisions of race, faith, politics, experience, or anything else that divides our species. This is Ian Solomon, and I am Dean of the University of Virginia's Frank Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy. My conversation partner today is a terrific leader and innovator in bringing peace to places with conflict. Tuohey, founder of PeacePlayers, who uses sports as a tool for conflict resolution. Brendan was a basketball player in college and also professionally in Ireland. Founded PeacePlayers with his brother Sean in 2001. And they've worked in South Africa, Northern Ireland, Cyprus, Israel, and the West Bank, also in the United States. Brendan, it is so good to have you here with us today.
Thanks, Ian. Pleasure to be here with you.
So maybe you can help us, starting with just I'm going to go back to how you founded it, but summarize the core idea of PeacePlayers and what's the model that you use in communities?
It's pretty simple. Kids who play together can also learn to live together. I think most people that have played sport, especially that have played competitively, understand the power that it has in bringing people together and forming bonds, forming trust. And our idea is to use this basic principle to work with young people in divided communities, to use sport to bring them together and see each other as human beings.
Well, for one aspect of sports is you trust your teammates, but then you have competitors. You find trust even across competitors?
Well, absolutely. I think, both trust and respect. But oftentimes your competitors become your teammates later, and it's not just a feeling of I am working with somebody to try to win a game. It's also the nature of I'm competing in a fair and open space, and this person's giving it all, and so am I. So is the team, and we might not necessarily love each other on a court, but I think we can respect and connect with one another. And I mean, so many of the relationships that I've formed in my life through basketball haven't just been with my teammates, been people that have played with and against for many years.
So it's been 24 years or so. How did it come to be? How did the organization start?
Sure. Well, it was really my brother Sean's idea and baby, and I helped to start it. But our story starts from growing up. We lived in the Shepherd Park neighborhood of Washington, D.C., a very diverse place, a great place to grow up. We fell in love with basketball, played all the time. And on the court, it was never what religion you are or what color or even what God you follow would say, can you play? And we were able to make friendships and form positive relationships with lots of different people through basketball. We played in high school, went to a big all-boys Jesuit school in D.C., played in college, and then played in Ireland. And, those formative experiences of, seeing people as people and, developing relationships through basketball, it stuck with me. It was a big part of who I was, but my brothers were as well.
So you were playing in Ireland, and you came back to the D.C. area?
Yeah, so I was playing in Ireland, and my youngest brother, Devin, was a senior at Gonzaga, our high school at the time. My middle brother, Sean, was in college playing. And every few years, the team from Gonzaga, the basketball team, did a trip somewhere. So I organized for them to come to Ireland. And as part of that, students started doing work in Belfast, Northern Ireland, with basketball and outreach to Protestant and Catholic young people. And in Northern Ireland, obviously, there's been a long-standing conflict between Protestant and Catholics, and young people are divided by the neighborhoods they live in, the schools they attend, and even the sports they play. And basketball was and is seen as a fairly neutral sport without the history and attachments to either the Protestant or Catholic community.
Because soccer is more political.
Soccer, it has more of a history, and the GAA, which is Gaelic football, and hurling are identified with the Catholic community, while rugby is identified with Protestant. But basketball doesn't really have a history, or so much of a history, and it doesn't have an affiliation with one side or the other. And unlike soccer, it just doesn't have the attachment, or certain Catholic clubs and certain Protestant clubs that you play and root for, and that was not the case with basketball. So we were able to, just run some clinics with the Gonzaga kids and coaches, for both, for kids from both communities. And my middle brother, Sean, came on the trip. And he really loved the experience and thought, hey, I'd like to do something when I graduate college. So I came back home to the States, first in New York and then in D.C. And my brother, a couple years later, graduated from college, and I helped him get to Northern Ireland. And he went over there to coach and play, but really got involved in this community development basketball program for Protestant Catholic kids. He loved what he was doing. He got to be really good friends with a police chief who had done work training police officers in Durban, South Africa. My brother, Sean, wanted to continue to travel and try this idea in sports to bring people together in different places. And the guy said, hey, why not? Why not Durban? Why not South Africa? So after that year, Sean came home and decided he wanted to go forward and create an organization based on using basketball to bring people together. List my help. We looked around, didn't really see any other organizations like this, which didn't make any sense to us. Like we grew up, and like others, you see the power of sport, the power of basketball, and the way that it can bring people together. We saw it work in Northern Ireland with Catholic Protestants. So like, why not in other areas?
Saw it work in D.C. in your neighborhood.
You see it all the time. When I grew up, that was my life. Grew up with it, and so we had this personal experience from growing up and from seeing it in Belfast, and thought, why not other places? So Sean is a wonderful coach. People love him. He's got a great personality. He's very engaging. Doesn't have many fears. And he is just so genuine. And so when he would show up knocking on, white schools, black schools, Indian schools, Durban has a large Indian population. Not only was there not much, bureaucracy or red tape there, but he was just endearing and people liked him. So he gained their trust.
And how big was basketball in South Africa at that time?
You're just coming out of apartheid. In South Africa, sport like Northern Ireland is big. You got rugby dominates soccer, cricket. And so basketball, similarly, there was basketball being played, but they didn't really have that association with necessarily a professional league. And so it wasn't very advanced. It didn't have a connection to either really, a specific community. And it was also really easy to play. And so you need a ball and you need a hoop. And one of the things we were able to do in South Africa pretty early on was build courts. And so we helped build about 75 courts, which really enabled more kids to play, not just with us, but play with their own. And also becomes like, kind of like what we had growing up, a playground where you keep kids go to and, can play any hour and, compete and learn and develop and love the game.
And did you have local partners who were running these leagues with you? Were they schools? Were they
most of the work in South Africa, particularly in the early days, but still now, is through schools. And so we end up becoming their like physical education class and going there after school and creating schools leagues and having teams compete each other. There's certain leagues already there, but a lot of schools in the areas didn't really have, competitive programs.
And if I'm not mistaken, the schools are very segregated still.
So it's white schools, black schools, and also segregated. You got Durban City, you got the rural areas, and then you got Umlazi, which is a township. So there's kind of issues between all of.
But you'd have you playing between the different schools, in leagues that would cross.
Yeah, and not only that, then we have kids, we have our own league where kids are playing on mixed teams, right? So you've got black, white, and kids together. Yeah.
How did that come about? And how many stories about?
Yeah, one of the first stories we had. My brother was able to convince a principal at a white school in Durban to do a match in Umlazi, to do an activity in Umlazi. And this, to our understanding, had never happened before in South Africa. We had any kind of sanctioned event between a white school going to a township. And South African Broadcasting Channel filmed it. So they were on the bus with these kids going to Umlazi to play a match. And you see these kids are scared, right? They don't know what to expect. And they get there and basically the whole community's out. Because we're not in Umlazi or even in South Africa in general, a lot of times you have these basketball events, they turn into just a big celebration of party music, like people just they're ready to go. And so they get off the bus and there's like a pretty big positive ovation. But we didn't know what to expect. And the kids, they had
But did you have some sense that the teams were somewhat evenly matched and would actually have a real competition?
well, we mixed them up. So the kids exchange flags, or their school flags, and then we mixed them up. So kids are competing with kids that they know and kids they don't know. And that's where we get to in all of our programs. It's not necessarily kids going against each other. It's really as much as possible kids playing together.
Fantastic.
Coming together from different communities to compete as well. And so after the max, they interviewed kids and coaches and parents, and everyone was saying pretty much the same thing. Like, I was nervous, didn't know what to expect. And when can we go to their place, or when can we do it again? And so that for us, I remember after that being like, I think we can really do this. Let's go back to the warehouse as our own organization. Let's scale this thing up and make it go at it, And so after that, I joined full-time from the States to help my brother. We brought some other people down to South Africa. We went back to Northern Ireland, and decided this was going to be our mission at High School.
And was there an issue like AIDS that you also brought to Northern Ireland? Was there other substantive education you tried to, encourage?
More just around leadership and advocacy, but that was a primary, that was the issue. And, you had this divide, and it's gotten much better. It still exists, but it's gotten much better. But especially, then 2001, it was a lot. So that was the primary effort. And what we were always thinking about is, how do you help use this game to build relationships between these young people, and not just there, between the schools. A lot of times you have early on, especially to have the physical education teachers came and they didn't know each other, right? They didn't necessarily want to know each other in a lot of cases, but they delivered the program with us. So they were building their own relationships. We had one effort, I don't know if you remember, by 2003, 2004, there was bombings in Protestant Catholic neighborhoods on kids kind of walking through a Protestant neighborhood to go to Catholic school.
Right.
And it made a lot of noise. It was Holy Cross and Wheatfield, and two schools. It was off Falls Road in Northern Ireland, which was a real kind of hot spot. And we were able, after a good year of preparation and talking to the families, to help them come together for the first time since that incident through our program. And it was a big deal. There was parents on both sides that didn't want to happen. We had a person, Trevor Ringland, was our longtime board chair, so a rugby kind of hero, and someone with tons of stature in the community, as well as one of our coaches, David Cullen, who's a Catholic, and also has a lot of a great reputation, and was key to us. So those two led an effort to bring together kids for an activity, the kids from across the Wheatfield School, and they received an Arthur Ashe Courage Award, the ESPYs, for it. So we had a great ESPN piece, giving the whole backstory and filming the event. But a lot of times, kind of that one initial moment, or making things happen that weren't happening before, not only enables us to continue on, but is a symbol for what's possible. And if you're able to bring these kids together for a basketball program, what more they can do. And that was actually a spark for other activities to happen between those two schools. And that's something we've learned a lot, because it's sport, because it's in the public arena, people view it, they witness it. So not only is the power of kids coming together, seeing the humanity in others and becoming friends, but other people are watching it.
So it can become a catalyst for other types of working together. Yeah. And the concept sounds fairly simple, right? Kids who play together don't fight as often, or can also learn to live together because they build relationships, they build some form of trust. It's a catalyst for more collaboration. Very simple. But at some point, you also brought more kind of theory or curriculum around problem solving and conflict resolution into the work. How did that come about?
Correct. So the first step in that was early on in South Africa. We were trying to understand better how we could use the program and the influence that our coaches had to educate young people around HIV and AIDS, which was really stigmatized in the community, and the infection rates at that point were really high, and it was, people were dying a lot, and people that were part of our program and people we knew were associated with it. And so we were able to partner with the Harvard School of Public Health and a few local NGOs in Durban to develop a curriculum for our kids that focused on HIV/AIDS prevention and education. And that was taking place largely on the foot. And so rather than getting kids in a classroom and, feeling like they were getting preached to, and we didn't believe that was going to work. And Harvard also had done a lot of, had a lot of history of working with young people in this context and kind of collaborated with us very closely to develop a curriculum that kids we thought would enjoy, have fun, want to do, learn from, and not just about HIV education, but other life skills. So that was a great kind of
somehow integrated into the game,
into
or just before the
into the practices, into how you coach, different activities. So we had a whole kind of workbook that we developed that we trained our coaches on. We made it fun, everywhere, from different kind of defenses to drills, and then you'd have talking points. And so after you do the fun drill, coaches would talk about what you learned, and then kids would actually say it and then talk about how does that apply to other parts of what. So and they were just really great to work with.
And did Harvard actually do some evaluations?
Yes,
and did it make a difference?
And it's a tricky piece in that at that point too, people didn't want to go get tested, and so there were some tough moments around that too, in terms of working with our coaches around, we got to be good examples, and if we're going to be sharing this and educating our kids, then you got to also be living that.
Wow.
Maybe that's easy to say, a little tougher to do, but some really incredible moments around coaches stepping up in an issue back then that was very hard, because people, if they were public identified as having the disease, you were, stigmatized and shunned.
And there was not national leadership in support of testing at that one back. You didn't quite embrace this.
No, I think one of the challenges we face is that we were young, we wanted to do the right thing, and and I think we did, but there's also ramifications that you don't always know about. So there were some times when you wanted to do the right thing, or what we thought was the right thing, but you're like, listen, hey, you do something like this, do you have instructions in place to be able to help people after that? Or what are the domino effects? And so that's always been a challenge, probably a good challenge, but we are working in really hard areas and situations, and you can't just show up, be like, we're doing this, aren't we? Isn't this great? Come together, trust us. People are rightly skeptical. Oftentimes, it's the second and third order impacts aren't thought about. And even when it comes to, working with our, especially Northern Ireland or Israel and Palestine, you have people, that commit to being part of what we're doing. There's some, there can be some impact to that you don't take some risk. That's a risk, and you got to support them. You got to know, you got to know when to push, but you also got to know when to step back. And you also and I talked about the importance of local ownership. These programs ultimately need to be in their hands, and those kind of big strategic decisions aren't made from 1,000 miles away. They're made by people that are from there, that are living this every day. And so that was a really early learning for us, and some of that was born in South Africa, and all the complexities, we're not from here. You don't know it well enough. Let's get the right people, not just to be part of the program, but to lead it and make these strategic decisions with us and support rather than vice versa. And that, I think, partly stem from some of the challenges that you find early on. I don't fully understand, and I don't know that I ever will, because I'm not here. But at the same time, you have to be cognizant of, hey, I'm running a global organization, and we need to be working together, in line with the same mission, and how we're going to proceed, and how we're going to support each other. It can go rogue pretty quick too if it's not the right people.
So certainly very severe tensions in South Africa, but it seems to me that you work in the Middle East, a whole different level of distrust, perhaps. How did that come to be, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that. I think it's always something that you're overcoming. I don't know if it's ever past tense, because it's always the work with challenge. Yeah. So with Israel Palestine, we started there in 2005, so 4 years after we founded the organization. As we talked about growing PeacePlayers early on, we obviously, that was a place that we thought we should be without ever having visited there, not knowing a whole lot, right? So we didn't know how to do it. But a person, Matt Minoff, that we tried to interview and place in South Africa to work with us, ended up getting a job offer to play in Israel. He's a really good player at Yale. And he accepted. And when he accepted, he shared that he wanted to look for opportunities for us to do PeacePlayers there. We didn't know if we'd hear from him. And he started calling us. This was 2004, 2005. Started calling us. We can do it. We can do it. So my brother flew over, and then I flew over, and met with some prospective partners, and went to the West Bank, and it was an unbelievable experience. And thought, yeah, not necessarily knowing how yet, but I think we can do something here.
Yeah.
And so that first summer, we ran a overnight camp for I think it was 25 Israelis and 25 Palestinians.
But even pulling that off, it was quite a feat. How do you
get
to trust that stupid?
Well, I think that was Matt really was great. And so he organized, we did it at the National Training Center. We had some board members that really were supportive of us doing, so we were able to raise the funding. We had a couple of NBA ex-coaches come with us. So we had a little variety. And, we had this kind of 1 week overnight camp, and we didn't necessarily know what we were walking into. And, but we couldn't have ended it in a better way. Literally, you had all the kids were mixed throughout the week. And you had a storybook ending of a, Israeli kid passing off a Palestinian kid for a game winner. The whole, the buzzer, the whole crowd goes nuts. But that night, I remember talking. We had some Israeli and Palestinian coaches that I didn't know. I just know that week. And we were talking about the week. And they said, they kind of talking about some of the good things that happened and the change they've seen. But they're like, listen, we've seen this before. You guys are going away. It's not going to last. This is all kind of like fluff. And so no, we're not. We're here. This is how we operate. And so my brother moved there, lived with Matt, and similar process, able to meet some of the right people. We had a couple early on that are still with us. They're without them, they're program that have really taken it on as their own. We accepted their kind of leadership and guidance, particularly around going slow, in terms of how quickly you can bring people together, how you talk about the program, keeping very low profile. All those things were going to be critical. I don't know that knew that or thought that it would have done it that way, but we listened. And it took several years for even like us to be comfortable bringing kids together. One of the things that we learned early on that we needed to do was to get the level of the Palestinian kids near to the level of the Israeli kids, because there was kind of inequality in terms of what they had
experience with basketball.
Yeah, just not. And basketball is really big in Israel. So we did that, and we also realized you can't just just start bringing kids together. There had to be some strategies, some slows. You actually had to work in a single identity context for a long time, sometimes.
So working with the Palestinian, building trust just with that community,
and even doing some of the work around bringing. There's conflict everywhere, right? So get those notions of we're in it together. Trust your teammate. A lot of the kind of leadership lessons that would go on to be really critical were taught in the single identity sessions. And just we had local people that knew how to do it and were able to bring people together. I mentioned that getting the Palestinian kids to a level. One of the real defining moments for us was having kids from the Palestinian side that were good enough that other clubs or programs wanted them on their teams, right? So you have kids that wouldn't have necessarily want to play with the other, but no, they're good. Let's do it. And that's one of the cool parts about the organization is it's not a lot of times you'll have, for traditional peace building or coexistence, you'll have kids that maybe self-select, not all the time, but sometimes. But where we had kids that were coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, that really were coming to for a large part, to play. And sometimes not even knowing I'm playing in the beginning, playing with the other. I'm going to play. Yeah, I'm going to play. And so seeing that, and seeing the, once kids win, once they're able to have some success, that kind of makes a lot of this okay. Maybe I'm getting not necessarily wanting to be with the other side, but I also want to win and having fun. And you start at an early enough age too, like before they're totally conditioned to
So what age would that be?
I was 5 or 6 years old. We had a group of kids over last week. They were DC and New York, several alumni. So in their mid to late 20s that joined us in 20 years ago. I'm 5 or 6 years old. So I think it's important, number one, to get kids at a young age, but even more importantly, for it to be a long-term intervention. So kids involved with our program for many years. They're not based on like these short-term camps or clinics. We have camps and clinics and other activities. But for real, I think, transformation to take place, it needs to be over the long term. It needs to be, combine the sport with the leadership, with the curriculum.
And were you conscious about that? Trying to do,
I think,
leadership development training?
Yeah, we were conscious that you got to make the basketball great and fun, and you got to keep kids coming back. We knew that.
Yeah, there have been ups and downs in the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians in the 20 years since you founded the program. I'd say we're at a particularly low point now. Although others might disagree. We've had many really low points, but certainly since October 7th, the lack of trust seems very, very high. Are you still operating?
And not only we're operating at full capacity. So about 2 weeks after October 7th, we started getting calls from our parents and kids wanting to play.
Israeli parents, Palestinian parents, both?
Correct. Which was, we didn't know what to expect. And we had our first initial practice with some of our older young women, and everyone showed up. And it was hard.
And this is a mixed team? It was a team mix.
Partly I think that they wanted to come back because they wanted that feeling of being in a safe place, of actually playing, of not being locked in their homes. Most they wanted to see their friends. And I think they wanted to make a statement. This is who we are. So we did that. Then we started having other teams and programs kind of open back up. And pretty much everyone started, they've showed up. And we've actually added members since October 7th. We're one of the few organizations that work with people on both sides that's been able to resume in-person activities since October 7th. There's been, I think, a general feeling of giving up on the peace and coexistence movement, or organizations have been forced to do things in different ways virtually, but we're one of the few that's been able to continue, and not only continue, but to grow. And I think so much of that is because of the foundation that I described earlier, right? Around having the right people, around having the credibility of the communities, about patients long term, about the love of the sport. So we're not all of our participants are like, I love this person, or I love her, but I think they respect, they see, they see the humanity, and they also really thrive on being involved in something bigger than themselves. So I think all the stories of impact, I don't know, there's a bigger one with the fact that what we've been able to do in the last 18 months, and the fact that I don't know, I'm sure there's been a couple, but almost all of our participants and families have stayed with us. And in the normal time, what were there before, pre-October 7th, it's really hard to do what we're doing. right? And now, like, it's even harder. So the fact that we have been able to continue getting out without, I don't want to falsely claim that everything's perfect. It's not, but even just these kids have the courage to come and be with one another during this time, and have refused to stop. They've seen their friends. They've, for the most part, they've stayed friends. It actually goes beyond friendship to, like, there's just a lot of, like, just love between each other that have been developed. So we've got kids that now, young people that are in their 20s that aren't, affiliated day-to-day with the program anymore, but they're still coming, they're still connected to one another, they're still asking about each other, their families have become, friends. And it's just this ripple effect that's happened.
I imagine that people who either watch a game or hear about this get a measure of hope and a possibility at a time when it seems that hope and possibility are distant.
Yeah, I mean, you don't hear about this a lot, and I will say, like, our first championship in 2015, 2016, we had 5 Israelis, 5 Palestinians, under 18 girls. They were really good. They made it to the finals of the national championship in Israel, which was a big deal. And they ended up winning the game by a point on the final basket. Got this great video of the last, 40 seconds. You see a score. You see the coaches and the parents all, like in the States, like behind the bench going right. And the buzzer goes off, and the girls, the parents are jumping up and down, and the girls go to half court with their arms around each other, like jumping up and down, and celebrating not just like winning this game, but like what that means. And anybody that witnesses that is impacted, no matter what you feel. So part of what we're trying to do is, in addition to helping to develop these relationships, but those moments which symbolize so much more, or just even, kids going to a Palestinian kid going to an Israeli house for a weekend, like they're part of their family, right? That doesn't happen over there,
right?
And it's happening every day with us.
So have you thought about how to scale this in a way, right? So let's take the U.S. right now, a period of high levels of polarization and distrust across communities. How does this become a tool for trying to move society in the right direction? Whole communities towards working together and cooperating and collaborating and having a shared hope.
Well, I think what we're seeing is that is taking place in small ways. The model that I described earlier about the local ownership is very important, in the U.S. as we build. So we're in 5 U.S. cities: Baltimore, Brooklyn, Chicago, L.A., and Detroit. And the various sizes of the programs depending on the city. But and also delivered differently than how we do it overseas, but the pillars are so much the same. Like, what works in all these locations pretty similar, right? Do you have the right people, right? Do they have the respect of the communities? Is there like a pipeline where a kid can go from being in the program to leading it? And then the mix of the sport and, leadership, peace building, those things are all, that's what needs to take place. What I'm really inspired by, and what talk about growth and scale, our focus going forward, in addition to continuing to run and sustain our programs, are helping to, we've been around now for almost 25 years, and so we have a lot of participants that are now in their 20s and even 30s who've had, really, I think, life-changing experiences with us, and also a lot of just incredible kids. And these are the ones that need to be leaders, right? Whether it be in sports and government, in business and technology, and so how do we give them, provide them the tools and resources and networks and opportunities to, number one, fulfill their potential, and 2, become those transformative leaders. And they've had these experiences.
Right.
I see that now they see each other. They can relate to people with different ours.
Right. They witness the possibility.
They witness it. They live. And what you see so much everywhere, I mean, no matter what you come, where politics you have, it's like this divisiveness, right? And that's not the way. It's not the way. So our, big aim of ours, how do you position these young people to be in, places where they can have a really positive impact on others based on what they've learned through their experiences with PeacePlayers, but also a lot of time not take too much credit for who they are. And that gives me hope.
So you're clearly changing people's lives, changing the world through basketball. Do you still play?
It's funny. I played all up to COVID. Played a few times a week. COVID hit and all the old guys stopped. So I figured I'd give myself another year or two to figure out if I'm going to do it or not. I've gone on to other things, but I miss it. And my thing is, I know I need to, I can't just go out and play. I need to go, say, all right, I'm definitely back in playing for, so know that if I'm bad for 3 months, 'cause that's what it's going to be until I, play enough that I have to have the tolerance of that. But, listen, it's anybody, I think it's also with other sports, but what a great way it is for people and their friends. Like, we used to play, twice a week with the same group of people. It bonds you. I do miss it.
Part of what makes us human.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brendan Tuohey, for being part of Grounds to Listen. It's great to have you at the Batten School here at the University of Virginia. It's great to have you on this podcast. And I'll give you the last word, and maybe you can include in this last word, if the people want to support your work and support the promise of what you're trying to do to create peace in the world, what do they do?
Right. So our website is a great resource. It's www.PeacePlayers, PEACE, players, PLAYERS.org. Has some really great stories on the work. There's also a lot of information for people who are interested around measurement and evaluation. We've got some really good data and studies shown on program impact, some really good videos, but also opportunities to both donate and become involved.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully people will reach out. In the meantime, I wish you lots of luck.
Right.
And hope to have you down here at UVA again soon.
It's great being here. Beautiful campus, great kids.